seeking approval. Moved by Member Howes and second by Member Pierce. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. There are no declaration of a pecuniary interest. If you have one, please do so. And we have a delegation, and it's Jennifer Boyer, and Jennifer's ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not Jennifer Boyer, but we'll get to her. We'll get to her in a minute. So through you, Mr. Chairman, it's a big night for us. This is our launching of the new official plan. It's a great opportunity for this council. It's a great opportunity for staff, and not just staff in development services, but staff throughout the county. I've only been involved in my career in only one brand new official plan from start to finish. So you're starting a really exciting exercise. It's going to go for a couple of years here. We got about a 20-minute presentation, and then we're happy to answer any questions after that. So if you're kind of thinking of questions as we go through, just jot them down, and we can kind of come back to them at the end of the presentation. There's a staff report that is with this as well. I'd encourage you to go through it because there's quite a lot of information there. There's a lot of information about timing and milestones and things like that, and Jen can speak to that very shortly. Due to you don't think it's a short time window. We got a little bit over 2 years, but it's actually fairly condensed. So some of the work that's needed to do the new official plan has already started. I mean, council may recall that we were doing an employment land needs analysis. So some of that work that our consultant Watson and Associates are doing in that project is going to carry over into this new official plan. We need some of that background information that they're preparing. The new OP will be prepared in accordance with all the provincial requirements, such as the Provincial Policy Statement, Planning Act, Places to Grow Growth Plan, and some of the recent changes that we've heard through Bill 108. It's going to build on the findings and of the new strategic plan that Council's recently approved, and it's going to be led in-house primarily. Jennifer is going to be the lead on it from Development Services, but a large part of the involvement is going to come through discussions with stakeholder groups, internally and externally, because you have to reach out to all these people to get the information that you need in order to develop a new plan. And so we're going to be jointly preparing that over the next couple of years. So, I mean, you can see from the slide up there, the new OP, it's going to describe the type of growth that the community wants, where growth should occur, also where it might not occur. It's an opportunity to address local priorities and changing needs. There's a number of relatively new councillors here, so you've heard through your constituents over the past number of months what some of those needs are. It'll be a great opportunity to kind of express that through the OP. And it's really a great opportunity to reflect a thriving and charming place like that Brant County is, where everyone wants to live, work, and play. So what is a new OP? This is the document that our group certainly uses on a regular basis, daily, monthly, weekly. We're into this thing all the time. You can see there that it ensures that growth is balanced and managed and coordinated to meet the county's current and future land needs, makes the public aware of the planning framework. It's through my career, the one thing that's irrefutable is that the development industry wants certainty. They want certainty. They want to know where they can grow, where they can't grow, how much they can grow, what studies and things they have to provide in order to make things happen. But the certainty piece is always there from that community. We have to balance the provincial policies with and conflicting land uses and the interests of the county council's interests as well. We're now required to update the OP every 10 years, but the great part about that is if we adopt a new official plan, and Jen will speak to this a little bit later too, is that you don't, it doesn't have any appeal potential if it's a brand new OP. So if we'd have started with an official plan update, so taken the existing version and just tweaked it a little bit, then that would have left open an opportunity to appeal. But if you start from scratch and you develop a new one through a municipal comprehensive review, and that's the process we're commencing, there's no appeal for that. So it puts council in a really, really great position. But what it does require is that you have a lot of good consultation. That's the other side of that coin. The last OP was approved by the province in 2012, so we're due. We're due to have a new OP. I think at this point, I'll pass you to Jennifer Boyer. She's our senior policy planner. She's going to outline the components of the OP, the work plan, and the schedule. And I think that's all that I will say. And so I'll pass it to Jen, and she can carry on from here. And then we'll conclude with Pam. Pam will conclude with some comments at the end to kind of wrap things up, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members of committee, and through you, Mr. Chair. So I'll sort of overview the main components of our official plan. And if you remember, I came to you in early June to Planning Advisory Committee, and I gave you an update on Bill 108, the new growth plan that had just been approved by the province in May. And I talked a lot about growth management and what we have to implement from the province through that process. So the biggest component through our official plan review right now is the municipal comprehensive review process, which is the piece from the growth plan, from the May document from the province. So it's a provincial plan that we have to implement, and we have to have conformity to that plan by July 1st, 2022. So it's a bit of an ambitious time frame. The biggest component to that is that this municipal comprehensive review. And what that is, it's key policies from the growth plan, focusing on growth management that we have to implement, and it's an integrated manner. So what it does is it tells municipalities in the Golden Horseshoe that you can't look at everything separate. You have to do everything as an integrated exercise, including looking at your population and employment forecasts, and your growth management targets, intensification and density, and to make a comprehensive plan for your municipality. So the biggest portion of our official plan is the MCR, as they call it. And the growth plan has a planning horizon to 2041. So that's what we're targeting, that every study we do is going to have a 2041 horizon, which is actually, quite some time from now, but in terms of growth forecasts, they're usually updated every 10 years anyway, and this puts us nicely if our plan's approved in 2022. We've got an extra, 20 to 25 year horizon, which is about what the province asks municipalities to do. And part of this MCR process is what we come up with is growth scenarios. And we come up with a strategy for the county, for our settlement areas like Paris and Burford, Mount Pleasant, St. George. And we also implement and bring forward to you a phasing of development strategy. And that includes all our housing, employment forecasts, our intensification and density targets that the province has prescribed to us, and we have to tell them if they've made sense, and then they approve it for us. And also part of the MCR is there's definitely things we have to do as part of that, and that also includes sort of residential scenarios for settlement areas if we do expand or we don't. So through the process, I'll be coming back to you to give you scenarios, and that's sort of your job in the next few years, is to determine what makes sense for the municipality moving forward. So the big component of this, obviously, and this has been a big topic since I've arrived, is the growth management strategy. So the good thing is that the MCR makes us do a growth management strategy. So it's all part of our official plan review, and it's a very large component of the growth plan policies that we have to implement. So part of it is, the biggest component is this thing called a land needs assessment, or the LNA. So the LNA is actually a methodology that combines all the categories together: employment, population, settlement areas, and you come up with the scenarios. Right now, the province is refining this guideline. It's supposed to be ready by January, and the good thing is our consultant, Watson Associates, is actually part of that review process, and they are actually very much in the know of what's going on, and they're the ones doing all these studies. So part of this is they're going to come out with products and technical background documents for us to review, which I'll be bringing forward the policy recommendations in the future. That includes the land needs assessment for our settlement areas, our employment strategy, our housing strategy, so different housing typologies for settlement areas, an intensification strategy based on our targets. And we're different than, obviously, the big urban centers, because we're called the outer ring in the growth plan, which makes us very rural. So we have very low intensification targets. A community structure analysis, which is our complete communities exercise, a market analysis, housing and also commercial, and a commercial urban land needs analysis, which we actually asked them to do extra because we had never had that done before. And one of the things about these studies, as you'll notice on the work plan, is that we don't have to consult on this information. We do, obviously, through the Planning Act and our official plan review, but these studies can be done. We can bring forward policies, and through the Planning Act, we can then consult. But part of what we're going to do is we're actually, through our consultation process, going to be bringing this information forward in pieces and have consultation on all the pieces as we go. So we're a little bit more transparent that way, and you can get information throughout the process. So I guess the point is, as Rob alluded to, why a new official plan? Why not we just do an amendment? Well, the biggest thing is the growth plan that was approved in May by the province is actually very prescriptive, and there's a lot of changes in it that we have to implement that the county does not have in its current official plan. So it really is, with that, a major overhaul anyway. And usually what happens with an amendment is you do an annotated version of your current official plan, which becomes the amendment. This is going to be a complete overhaul of the current OP. Sections are going to change, schedules are going to change, whole bunch of different policy direction, which that's what I will bring to you, and also through the consultation process about how I want you to look at how we should move forward with those directions. And I think, though, over this process, which is about 2.5 years, it's an opportunity for council, the public, and stakeholders to set a new direction. Because we're looking at 2041. And if you think of the kids today, they're going to be in their late 30s by that point. So you have to think about, wow, things are going to change by then, and we actually have to set the direction. So there's a lot of known unknowns, but at least we have the ability to set some direction that makes sense and what's important to this community and what's in the future. So as Rob said too, the good thing about a new official plan is there's a new structure with the Planning Act that the plan itself is not appealable. So I think that in the report, I've actually outlined some additional details about why a new official plan makes sense for the municipality. And we did talk to Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing several times about new amendment, what do you think? They said definitely at this point, because there's so many policy changes happening, a new plan makes sense. So we do have their input on that. So our Simply Grand Plan, that's what we've come up with, and I think it's great. So I think that we have an opportunity to review our current policies, what's working and what can be refined. Because you sit here at Planning Committee and you see the policies, you see what's working and what's not. And you definitely can think of, I bet, several different things that you think that definitely needs to be taken a look at. And I feel that there could be a better framework in the Planning Act and how we do our business day to day that could be refined. So in the report, I outlined just a basic summary of some minimum themes that we'll definitely be looking at such as complete communities framework, affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, and definitely housing options. Housing options is now a definition in the provincial policy statement proposed, but that's everything from changes in tiny homes and different secondary units, the changes through Bill 108. So we have to look at also the missing middle, low rise, like what makes sense for here? If we are going to grow in different ways, in, out, up, down, what makes sense? Or no growth. These are the options, but we have to look at different ways people will live, not just today, but in 20 to 25 years. We also have to look at how we're going to service, how are you going to move, how are you going to get there, how are you going to live, how are you going to work, and what are you going to do? And that includes also what we value and what we protect. So it's a big exercise in looking at the vision of how we are going to take our policies, but it's not just planning and policy, it's actually looking at different items. And it's also through the vision, through the strategic plan, and some of those items and themes that came out. They're very similar indeed. So those are things that we're also going to be looking at through this process. So part of this also is we've sort of arranged some buckets of discussion. So these are actually sort of items from the growth plan, and a lot of municipalities are coming up with topics and themes that can be discussed. They're policy themes that run through the growth plan that are important to municipalities. So we've just made some buckets, and they're very much open to discussion as well. But we just sort of categorized different things that can be discussed through these sort of policy themes. So we're going to be writing sort of discussion papers and opening consultation sort of on these different themes. So for instance, building healthy and complete communities. Again, we have to look at where we live and how we live. We also have to look at food security. You know, we have to look at affordable housing. You know, different things about what makes a community healthy, safe, and where people want to live, work, and play. So what makes a complete community? A complete community is all about, you know, people enjoying where they live, but having access to services, and also the planned growth for the future, and also the wise use of resources as well. For instance, protecting what we value. Well, that's very much about the natural heritage system, agriculture, heritage, you know, natural resources, all the things we want to protect for the future. And how we green. We have to look at climate change and resiliency. We have to write a plan for that. Different energy and mobility options for green energy. And also in terms of diversifying, you know, use of low impact development, gray water, you know, reusing water in different ways. So things like that. So what this does is open up a discussion about, you know, how can we include things that if people want to do things in the future, how can we write a framework that will allow different ways of living in the future? So we have to think about that in the constraints that we have at the moment. Planning for infrastructure, the same thing. 2041, do we have enough capacity? You know, what's it going to look like? How are we going to service it? Things like that. Who's going to pay? Transportation and mobility, we also have to include active transportation, walking, biking, cycling, using the train. How do people get to and from work? How do they get to the store? Things like that. And economic development and prosperity, a big theme also is how people work. How are they going to work in 20 years? Are they going to be mobile at home? You know, remote, flying through the air, I don't know. So different things. So these buckets are sort of going to be based on sort of themes and discussion papers and workshop themes, just to start conversations about sort of just making people talk in a different way, because policies can be a little bit dry. So that's what we're thinking of in the future. So, and I just ran through those. So I guess at this point in the process, attached to your report is a work plan and schedule, which was attachment number 1. So what I've done is I've outlined from now until 2022 the actual work plan and schedule and a basic outline about where we're at and where we'll be before the term of council's up. So it's got 5 phases. Right now, we're at obviously the commencement, and that's our launch, which is phase 1, which is our commencement and strategic planning. And we're obviously going to have several meetings before then. The phase 2 is our background studies, and it's our real engagement process over all of 2020. So it's all the background studies, the technical info, the identification of issues, and the policy themes, just as I outlined in the slide before. And that's our big consultation next year. We're going to be pretty heavy on that as well. The phase 3 is the proposed policy directions. That's when we actually get into statutory requirements under Section 26 of the Planning Act. We have to bring to you, through special council meeting, the policy directions, and we'll get direction to prepare a draft official plan. Then, those will be growth scenarios, like the real sort of meat of the actual technical municipal comprehensive review. And then from there, we prepare a draft official plan, which is actually the written portion and the policies to consider. And that's moving into 2021. It seems like a long time, but it's actually not. And then we get to the actual final official plan, and that will be in late 2021 consultation period. And then by March 2022, we are to have the final official plan to you for your consideration for adoption. And if it does get adopted and you're happy with that, we send it to the ministry for approval. So the schedule's there, and it's got pretty much all the detail there. And then we'll move forward with that. So the second piece and the second attachment was a consultation and engagement strategy. This is an extremely important part of the official plan. Now, some of it's statutory requirements through the Planning Act. Section 26 is we have to have meetings open to the public. We have to do public open houses at certain points during the process. But of course, every municipality does way more than that. And you should, because there's so much information that by preparing a draft official plan, you better have input before you get to that point. Because the point is you want to have engaged as many people as possible, many stakeholders, the public, yourselves, to get to that draft official plan. So the consultation and engagement strategy is, somewhat comprehensive in terms of it's a high level about different types of workshops, engagement pieces, different deliverables that we want to include, our targeted stakeholder consultation with different groups, and also in terms of technical advisory committee, internal working groups as well, because you have to communicate internally, which is a very big thing with all committees, departments, they're all in on it. This is a team effort, by the way. It's not just one woman, it's everyone's input. And the biggest point, too, about the official plan is there's different strategies working in tandem. So the Transportation Master Plan is also working in tandem, along with the different master servicing plans as well. So tomorrow night, we are in Burford for the master servicing plan. That itself is going in tandem as well with this, because it's going to look at our settlement areas, also in terms of patterns and if servicing is an option, things like that. So part of the consultation strategy is that besides the public engagement, there was also on the work plan something called a counselors sponsors group, and also a potential workshop with yourselves, maybe in probably early January or so. And what I do in an informal setting is that I would like to talk to you more about your roles or your responsibilities, you personally, if you would like to be engaged in certain events, things like that. So if you're interested in that and you're willing, then I'd be more than pleased to do that. And the consultation and engagement strategy is very fluid. It's more of a high-level look, and as we move forward, I'll be letting you know all the pieces to what's happening throughout the process. So part of it, obviously, is we have a lot of social media. I can't thank enough our Melissa and Sarah over in strategic planning and corporate communications for their help, because they've already done a website just like that. They provided all the graphics. The website's ready to go. It'll be live after council once this is approved. but it's ready to go, and obviously we'll be doing a lot of engagement through social media and our website as well. And again, with social media, and our department is actually about to have their own Facebook and Twitter account. So we'll also be doing things through that. And the social media here is actually really fantastic, and they're up on that quite a bit. So I will now turn it over to Pam. She will do the next few slides, talk about what's next, and sort of close it off, and we'll take some questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Through you, the chair, and to committee, you may be wondering, well, what's the next step in the new official plan? As Jennifer said, tomorrow evening she'll be over in Burford with the Master Servicing Open House to do a short presentation and to start getting and building up that official plan information with the community. Also, there will be an agriculture advisory group in December, which Jennifer will do a launch of the official plan. I would encourage everyone, if you know of any community outreach events that planning and Jennifer may be interested in, we're definitely open to coming out to different community events. Jen, as she identified, she'll be selecting a date with clerks to meet with council and to do a workshop. And that will be really to ask council to be champions for this exciting project. That presentation to council will talk about future deliverables and provide a toolkit, again, on how we can reach out to our citizens in various engagement opportunities. And then the real consultation is targeted to start in February 2020. And there will be, again, various events in this month in March. And so those will be, just stay tuned for those events. And again, really council workshops and the council champions will help us as staff manage the expectations of council over the next 2.5 years of this project. So we look forward to working with you. And it's a great week to launch the new County of Brant official plan because we are in World Town Planning Week. Planners don't just have a day anymore, they have a whole week that we celebrate planning. So the actual World Town Planning Day through the Canadian Institute of Planners and the official, and through OPPI is Friday, November 8th. And our planners, Jen included, but our whole planning team is actually venturing out to some of the schools in the County of Brant that day. We're going to get the students excited about planning, about the County of Brant, and we're going to be encouraging involvement in the new county official plan that day. So with that, I want to thank Rob and especially Jennifer for all their hard work, especially setting out the OP launch and the project outline. It's a big ordeal. I've been through 3 new official plans. This is my 3rd one, and it is a big deal to come up with a strategy of how we're going to tackle this big project. So I'm very proud of the simple plan that they've put together. And after all, in order to have good development at the County of Brant, you really need good policy. So this is an important project for the County of Brant. And with that, I'll turn it over to Rob, Jennifer, and myself if you have any questions.
At this point, I'll just go right around the table. I'll start with Member Gatler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Jennifer, excuse me, or Pam. We mentioned about communicating with the public through various sources on our website, etc., social media. How are we going to communicate with those people who don't use computers? The timing seemed quite favorable, February, March, because our first set of tax bills for 2020 come out in March, and there is usually an information sheet included with those tax bills, and I'm wondering if a half-page information summary on the official plan, what's happening, could be included in that tax bill for reaching the households that don't use computers.
Excellent. Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor Gatward. That's an excellent suggestion. We call them information slips. So what we do is we do different varieties of either mail-outs. There's a whole bunch of different ways you can try to communicate with people, especially if there's an event going on. So there's information, and then there's notice about events. So the thing is that, you can do online stuff. So we do surveys. We're gonna have a survey online. So those people who are always online and obviously are into social media, we've got, electronic surveys, the notices that will be electronically displayed. But what we're trying to do also is do targeted consultation through exactly that, mail outs. So that was an excellent idea, I've noted it. And also, there's different ways of communicating. So what I think we're trying to do is not do these grandiose open houses, because I've done lots of them in my life and they don't necessarily work. Trying to do things that are targeted. We're gonna do like pop-up booths. We're gonna go to people at arenas. We're gonna go to different venues where people are. We're gonna go where people are, rather sometimes than they come to us. And the mail-outs are huge. And that's very good because you get them sort of put just the info slips as well. And one of the best examples that Rob passed me a few months ago was just a big road sign, electronic billboard, official plan open house. So people turn into it. So there's lots of different ideas, but thank you, that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, and the libraries and the customer
Libraries.
service offices that people visit that wouldn't have a computer necessarily. It's amazing when people call me with a complaint, I say, do you have emails so that I can send something to you or you can respond back? No, I don't even have a computer. And it
That's true.
surprises me how many there still are.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's why I wanted to reach out to those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Jennifer. Jennifer, a couple questions, Jennifer. At the staff level for planning, who would be the champion for this?
So what I had mentioned in the consultation strategy for champions, so what that was mostly to say is, any sort of members of the committee or council who want to be sort of more engaged. So champions of the OP, you could sort of help me on certain aspects or come to certain events or engagement activities, or if there's a specific topic, like those buckets I showed you, if any of them are near and dear to your heart and you're like, oh, actually that's really, really what I want to really engage people on, that's something too. So it's very much open, and I think that's why it needs maybe a bit further discussion with, a little workshop that I would like to have with you about sort of getting a few more ideas about what specifically you are interested in, and if you want to do more than just sit here and us bring information to you.
But-
You want to be engaged in different manners.
Yeah, no, sorry to catch up. Maybe I shouldn't use the word champion. Who's the point person? Is there a point person in?
Oh, sorry, it's me.
It is you, okay. I know Rob's going to be leaving us soon, so I don't think it'd be Rob. Because it's you.
Well, as I said, it's a team effort, but
Okay.
I'll be the project manager.
Okay. Some of this can be decided at the local level. Some of it can't be because it's provincially pushed down our throats. For example, and I just want to ask you about three things. And you touched on it briefly in your presentation. But those intensification density targets, are we allowed to set those, or are we allowed to set those with input from the province?
Do you want to answer that? Sure.
And the other one I'm wondering about is population growth numbers. Is that provincially
Yeah.
set? That one
Yeah.
is?
I'll get Rob to answer that question, actually.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen. Through you, Mr. Chairman. There are no provincial population police, so to speak. So if we weren't able to hit a target that the province gave us, I don't think you're going to see people from the province showing up here and pointing fingers at the county in terms of that. The other, sorry, your other question was
Well,
the
I'm looking at intensification,
target?
density, population, I know they're all kind of related.
Yeah, the intensification target, the county currently has an intensification target of 15%, and that was a request that the county made of the province to have a lower than normal
Yeah.
intensification target. The ability is there to do that again. I would suggest that you let the plan kind of roll out a little bit first to get a sense of what you feel that you're hearing from the public in terms of what that target might be. Partly, we have a lower intensification target because our geography is much smaller than larger cities. We have fewer opportunities for intensification or rebuilding, so to speak, of underutilized sites.
Okay, so there is some give and take on those, but not on the population numbers. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, couple quick comments and then a couple questions. First, thank you. That was a great presentation. I appreciate that. And it was interesting to hear that, again, as to Councillor Miller there, we're on the outer ring, so we have lower intensification levels. That's good to know, and I think that's important for people to know. Now, also, it was very good that we can put the whole LID methodology into this thing, and that way it gets to the point where developers will, not might, they will follow certain things, which is fantastic for everybody. So my two questions is, when you said the plan itself is not appealable, so because it's a new official plan, it's not appealable, does that mean as a whole you can, are any parts of it appealable on their own, or just as a whole, here's my official plan, it's been approved by council, sent through to the province, so now you can't appeal it?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, so the changes to the Planning Act that were made, you can't appeal the whole official plan,
Okay.
but there can be site-specific appeals.
Okay.
But they have to be obviously extremely targeted and vetted, but the whole plan cannot be appealed, because that's what happened many times before to many municipalities, is the entire plan would get appealed, and then it was several years before they actually
Right.
whittled the issues down. And it actually made for wasted time, really.
Right.
So we're single tier, and what's going to happen is that once council adopts our OP, the new OP, it goes to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and it will be approved, and it will be complete.
Okay, perfect. And my last question, 2.5 years, like you say, it sounds like a long time, but it's not really a long time. Is 2.5 years enough time to get this right?
I believe, based on the schedule I've presented you today, that it is.
Okay.
The good thing is we have a consultant that's already been working on our municipal comprehensive review.
Okay.
And what they've done is they've now added some additional components to their scope of work, which was included in the work plan itself. So it is tight, but I think based on the schedule, if we keep on track, then it's quite doable. So at least we've already started, and those pieces have been progressing, but I think now is really the forward momentum.
Okay, that's good to know, because I was just, and again, once we get ourselves over 2 years into this, I'm quite confident that it'll be the right thing, but I'm just saying, if it were to come to the council in that March and it didn't, you know what I mean, and it didn't get approved then, or I just want to make sure it's enough time, but that's it. Thank you very much.
Member Bell. Thank you, Mr. Chair. To Jennifer and Rob. This is a huge and I think very important undertaking, and it does need our support. We need to be buying into this. In 2022, this council needs to put its stamp on it and say, yes, that's what we've got. Because what it does, it helps us address any decision that we have to make. We can put it in proper context. We can refuse things with confidence. We can accept things with confidence. I was taken with one of Rob's comments that the plan should be what the community wants, and I think that's it's a very powerful statement. It was a surprise to me that it was as stated as clearly as that, because my understanding was that we're sort of governed by all kinds of provincial processes and plans. So the degree of discretion that we have, you made it sound like there's a reasonable amount, and I'm pleased to hear that. Couple of questions. On page 4 of the document, there's a reference to a 25-year horizon as opposed to a 20-year horizon. But which one is it, Jennifer?
So through you, Mr. Chair. So we had a discussion with the province about the numbers. So the provincial policy statement, the proposed update, which we don't really know when it's going to be in effect, they're saying potentially January, that asks for a 25-year horizon right now. So the thing is, it just says 25 years, and it's up to a municipality to come in conformity with. So do your exercise, update your OP if you need to. The growth plan, which we are in, says specifically 2041. So we talked to the province and they said, you know, we would prefer, since you are in the Greater Golden Horseshoe, that you look at that 2041 date.
Good, that's good and clear. When we talked about infrastructure, do we touch on soft infrastructure like retail and healthcare and schools? We do?
Yep, so through you, Mr. Chair. So that's all part of the comprehensive package. So that's part of the municipal comprehensive review for complete communities. So the soft services are included. So the OP is going to look at things like planning for parks, planning for different areas for, you know, healthcare, healthy communities, that typology about what that means. And it does look at the soft service component.
Yeah. Final thought. I presume we're going to look at whether we can afford it.
That is correct, through you, Mr. Chair. It includes a financial plan analysis, so the county has a financial plan, which does get updated. So what this does, it actually looks like it's a comprehensive look. So for instance, the Transportation Master Plan gives a horizon to 2041, but it also looks at the affordability picture. So what it does is it looks at concepts for future growth, and it would be the same thing for infrastructure planning. They're looking at the affordability typologies for different servicing options, and that's included in the municipal comprehensive review.
Okay, glad you. Absolute final thought. I think we need ambition in this, and do you need council direction early on any issues?
Through you, Mr. Chair, at this point, I will be coming to you, and I think the intent is almost every month through Planning Committee that I'll be coming with updates. I think that's pretty fair, because it's, even if I just come to you to say, this is what we've been working on this month, these are some things that have happened, just as a staff report. But as the process moves on, especially as you see in the work plan and schedule, I will actually be coming to you for deliverables. And there are in that schedule decision-making points. And I think that's probably that I lay that out even more if we do a little workshop together about what's expected of you, roles and responsibilities, and at what points through the process that you're expected to make decisions.
Yeah. Just one final thought. When I was doing a similar job in Shell, and we had the CEO of Shell come along and said, build me a plan, there are no limitations. And we started talking through this, and we said, well, how about let's close one of the head offices? Oh, no, you can't do that. So are there any things that we need to tell you that are absolutely off the table before you start?
Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. I mean, this is why I think that through issues listing and themes, which is the first part of the OP, these are the items that I need everyone to come to me and say, like, look, these are the issues, these are, the things that have been happening in the background, and, you need to be champions of certain issues. We obviously have a very prescriptive growth plan to follow, but it's up to a local municipality to work through those issues and implement a local plan. So, thank you.
Member Howes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So I'm really eager to be a part of this, and the engagement with the community on the different buckets, I think, is going to be a really great series of exercises. I think we had some real good success in our engagement with the strategic plan and some unique ways of reaching out to the community, so I look forward to seeing how we connect that way for this project. The timing of this, recognizing that we're looking into 2041 horizon, but at the same time we're trying to wrap this up in a couple of years. A lot of a lot of what we consider, especially related to growth, as Councillor Miller said, seems very provincial driven. This times out right around just before the next provincial election. So what happens if there's a change in provincial direction 3 months after this thing gets wrapped up?
So through you, Mr. Chair, well, that's very much what's been happening in the last few years. So we've just had a change in government, and they just approved the new growth plan in May. And some municipalities that have actually finished their OP have had to go back and redo it, especially pieces of the municipal comprehensive review. And I think we had mentioned before, we're actually in a really good position that we've started, but our MCR is ongoing. So that happens a lot in the planning world. I don't know, we're just used to it, but once your plan is done, it's done. So that's why I think that the government, the provincial government that's sitting right now wants conformity to the growth plan by July 1st, 2022, because it's before the election. And that's fair, because I think the OP process can follow that fine. And if there's a change in government, well, our OP stands. We have approved it because it's not just provincial policy, it's balancing the local needs as well. So it's a balance between both. So it's our plan, and it will be approved by the minister. So there could be a change in government, and eventually they could change the growth plan, and they will. But then you sort of go through the process, and if there's any pieces that are different, then you just do an OPA, an official plan amendment, several years after your plan is approved.
Thank you. Member LaFerrier?
I will be quick because our meeting is coming next. However, I just want to say a couple of things and ask one question. One, if you're looking for champions, I think this is the most important document, the most important policy we'll do on this term of council, and we've had several, but I think this will be the most important in the long run, so I'm happy to sign up for that. Part of our whole process around tapping the brakes and that policy was around catching our breath from a planning point of view, and with this timeline, I think that this actually was a nice, maybe unintended or somewhat intended consequence of tapping the brakes, is that it sounds like we're really prepped to go within the timeline that we have. My question is a little bit on the provincial dynamics, much like Steve's. Why might this not be approved? Does that happen? And if so, is it more about the government of the day sending sort of recommendations for tweaks, or is it, can we be too bold or too ambitious and risk it not being approved?
So through you, Mr. Chair, that process likely will not happen, because part of our engagement is also with the province throughout this process. We have to constantly update Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing through the process. We have to touch base with them through the Municipal Comprehensive Review process. We have to give them all our technical background documents for review, and we'll be engaging them the same way at the same points, just like the public and stakeholders. So it can't get to that point, because we have to backtrack and keep moving forward. If there's any adjustments we have to make through the process, those will be communicated, and we'll have to come back and say, well, no, the ministry actually would like us to go in a slightly different direction, and then sort of make some amendments from there.
Ma'am, could I ask a question? Is this for about the subdivision on West
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. The planning meeting has not started yet. It will start at 7.
Okay, I was wondering.
You finished?
Yeah, thank you.
Member Bailey?
Well, I think this is very exciting. As the new mayor and with new councillors, I think that we are very excited that we inherited some things that maybe we don't understand, or whether we think they might not apply anymore. So it's very exciting that we can now address things that didn't really make sense to us or seemed odd to us. When I think back to 1999, when we amalgamated and became the County of Brant, things have changed so dramatically since 1999 to now. So many things that we can put in place during this process will make more sense to everyone moving forward. So not only do I think it's time, but I think that you've got a very excited table here, so I think it's going to be a good timing, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
We've been around the table once. I'll have a quick question there. Will we be working through the London office?
Through you,
Yeah.
Chair? Yes, we are,
Okay,
yes.
thank you. We have a recommendation before us. How's the committee wish to deal with it? Moved by Member LaFerriere, seconded by Member Pierce. Any questions or comments? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
Thank
The
you.
next meeting will be this evening at 7 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned.